Welcome back, folks. I know I'm not fishing, kind of crippled. It's just a whole thing. Forget about that right now. Let's talk about the garden, because I do that too, Well, today I want to talk about tomatoes. People make things more complicated than they need to be. Here's the reality. Fertilize them once a week with a tomato organic fertilizer. Just use about half the recommended dosage for plants that are in pots or in straw bales like these, and feed them once a week. You don't have to worry. They'll tell you don't fertilize your tomato plants when they're putting out fruit, because they'll stop putting out fruit. Well, that's not true. We'll look at them here in a second and I'll show you. Water them. Here in Florida, it's hot. Water them. The catch is that you got to water them regularly. All right, so if you water them in the morning, water them in the morning every day, the same amount. That's it. Easy peasy. Now, trellising is a concern. A lot of people worry about that, and they want to go buy the cages and all of this, spend more money on the cages and the trellising than they spend on the tomatoes themselves or the plants. That's crazy. And let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so what I do is I string them up any which way, because as long as you wrap them, if you look here close, as it grows and it gets long enough that you can bend it without breaking it, just wrap it. So I have this string, I strung them up on that trellis, and now they're too long for that, so rather than trying to go over the top and not be able to reach them, I run them across this string to over there. Those are black cherry tomatoes. This one I just ran over there. That's all you got to do. You can make them go sideways, you can make them go in a circle. The whole idea is that you keep them off the ground, and if you're wrapping them like this, no problem. And see, that's not taught. They have room to grow. So this here is a black crim. One of the things you want to do is make sure to cut off any of the stems or leaves that are on the bottom, so they're not touching the ground or the soil, and they're not getting diseased. Now, I used to clear it out pretty good throughout the middle all the way up, but the problem with that is in the summertime with this sun, man, it just wrecks these tomatoes. So I leave the leaves on there to prevent the sun from hitting the tomatoes too much. Now we got a whole bunch. Let me see, can I get in there? And these are still young. These black crims get pretty big, but there's tons of tomatoes on this plant, and they're going. They're just continuing all the way up. I'm sure you already know, but don't forget to prune the suckers. Any little stem that grows from these spots here, these crotches, these armpits, prune them off. Get rid of them. We don't want those. Now, one of the things that I do with those, until I have enough tomato plants, rather than buying a lot more, because I'm broke, I'll take those suckers out of the crotches, I'll let them grow to be about 6 or 7 inches, and then I'll pot them. And this one's been in this pot for about a week now. We got a whole nother tomato plant, and that'll put out quicker than if you seeded it. So here's the black cherry, doing the same thing. Let's see here. I mean, they just covered up. Big, healthy, pretty tomatoes. That's all there really is to it. Walmart's got the tomato fertilizer, the organic tomato fertilizer. It's like $6 or $7. I don't remember exactly, but it'll last you a good while. And that's the same fertilizer I use on my peppers, pretty much anything that flowers. I even use it on my citrus trees, and it works great. Let me show you one more tomato here, if I can get around. It's hard for me to walk on account of the gout and such. Well, I'm in a lot of pain too, so if I'm shaking the camera, I apologize. It's hard to stay still. So this here is called a tumbling tom. Now, this plant is a cherry tomato, and it grows like a bush, right? So it's essentially a determinate, and it just, if you put it in a hanging basket, it just flops over. Now, I've eaten 100 tomatoes off of this thing already, and there's probably 50 of them on there right now that needs to be picked. I can't keep up, and they keep putting them out. You can see those little guys, and they keep producing. It's hot here already. They don't care. They're just going and going and going and going. So many tomatoes in there, and that pot is tiny. Let me go around the other side so you can see it. That pot is just itty bitty. Look at that pot. Oh, there's my broke gnome. Look at that tiny little pot. It's not designed for these plants, but it does just fine. It truly does. I would put it in a bigger pot if I had my choice, but that's the pot I bought it in, and I wanted to see what it would do. Well, by golly, I water the stew out of it in the mornings. Once a week, I fertilize it, and this thing just keeps on pumping. Over here, pardon the camera shake again, we're walking, kinda. I bet you it looks like you're seeing through the eyes of a zombie. Now this was a rather large cutting I took from the cherry tomato. It acted like a sucker, but it wasn't in the crotch of a stem. But I pulled it off, and it was like 1.5 feet. Took off the bottom leaves, planted it in this bucket, and it just took off. And again, this is all the trellis you need. You just tie it off down here. Let's see if I can do a better job. Tie it off down here, wrap it around, and as it grows, you just wrap the plant. And I have this one tied off to my canopy. It's really that easy. There's no need to make gardening any harder than it needs to be, right? It doesn't have to be hard. Now, I spend about an hour out here every day watering and weeding and pruning and tying up things as I need to, but I enjoy it and I have the time. If you don't have that kind of time, you set you up a drip system or something. I prefer to do it by hand, so I'm going out here experiencing the garden, seeing what needs to be done and such. But don't make it so hard. It's not. And look at that. Look at here. See if I can get you on the camera. You see that there? That's gonna grow straight across here. And those cherry tomatoes are just gonna dangle, right? So you come out here in the garden, just clip off the stems. That'll grow all the way across this thing. I'd say right now, it's at least 5 foot tall. You know, it's raised, but it's at least 5 feet tall. And I've had cherry tomato plants get 12, 15 feet, believe it or not. It's just ridiculous, so long as you treat them right. The Black Crim's doing just the same. I mean, they're neck and neck. Make it easy. Do the easy stuff. You'll do just fine. See you next time.